Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Winnard, and this is a presentation and a talk through how to get into a human spaceflight career here in the UK. Harry Carr has been asking me to do a talk on this topic for a while, so I'm going to go through it today for you. So mostly this talk's going to be around how I personally went from being a student interested in human spaceflight, thinking it wouldn't ever be possible to work in a human spaceflight career, to how I got some experience working at the European Astronaut Centre, multiple UK space associations, eventually doing a PhD in a human spaceflight topic, on a space medicine topic, so that will be relevant to a lot of people listening. Eventually became an academic in the UK working on spaceflight projects, and today I'm still involved in human spaceflight research as a consultant on space medicine systematic reviews at the European Astronaut Centre, but mostly I'm still based in the UK and doing research. Before we get going, just just introduce myself here. This is me. This is me when I was at the Astronaut Centre. But I wanted to point out that getting into a space career is quite challenging. Don't expect to find that opportunities just are given out, or don't think that there's some kind of hidden place where you can find job applications or opportunities, or feeling that academics or people that are working in it have got all these opportunities just waiting for you. There's very little, especially paid work available, especially in the UK. So I think something I would have wanted to know early on, with hindsight, is just how important it is to be trying to make your own opportunities, and you've got to put a lot of effort in, and it's not easy. And there's a lot of times that you get turned down for things, or that things just don't work out, and not being deterred. If it's something that you're really, really interested in, accepting that it's going to be hard work and getting stuck in, but rather than just asking people to give you things, you need to be actively trying to seek things out and being proactive, getting involved yourself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is talk through my own background, my own story, going from undergrad student, not being sure exactly what I was going to do or how to even break into a space career, how I personally got through and into working in spaceflight. Um, there's many other ways of doing it, so don't feel this is the only way. But hopefully it will maybe open your eyes to see how you can make things work, and how to take small baby steps over a period, and how it can grow. So hopefully that's going to be useful. And then the other thing, I mean, Harry asked for a couple of things that I could include. One of the other things that I'm going to put in is talking about how to do projects in human spaceflight, so a research project. So I mentioned earlier that I consult for the European Space Agency at the European Astronaut Centre, their medical operations team, on systematic review methodology for space medicine reviews that actually inform space medicine operations. So after I've talked through my background and how I got into a space career, I will talk through briefly how to do a systematic review in a space medicine topic and point you towards some of the resources. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll give you a real quick whistle-stop tour of it at the end of the presentation, and then I'll point you towards some much more in-depth resources that you can go to learn a lot more. So I hope this is useful. I hope this is interesting. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Okay, so this is me quite a number of years ago. So my background was I did science A levels, all three sciences: biology, chemistry, physics. I really didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise. I'd always been interested in human spaceflight, didn't think it was really something possible to break into. So I was working regular careers, like I guess a lot of you are. I did a biomedical science degree, worked in pathology and phlebotomy in the NHS, so I was working in the acute hospitals and out in GP surgeries. And I started to realize that I wanted more than that, and I wanted to try and build a different career for myself, and I wanted to try to build human spaceflight in some way. So after I'd done my first degree by medical science, after I'd worked in the NHS for almost 2 years, I took the big step of going back to university and doing a second degree. And I chose to do physiotherapy. So more working directly with patients was the idea. But I also chose physiotherapy because for the first time I was trying to just do something, some small thing that would benefit human spaceflight. And I thought even if I just do my dissertation on human spaceflight, that might be enough of a contribution. So that was my goal when I was going into physio, and because I'd already done a degree and I knew how it worked, my very first week on my physio degree, I was already talking to lecturers and tutors about what topics I wanted to do my final year dissertation on, and I don't think students do that very often. So it was a bit different for them working with me as I was going through because I had this constant goal. Um, but as I was going through my physio degree, I did start to build spaceflight in. Whenever I had a choice of what to do presentations or essays and things on, I would pick spaceflight topics. And it was really easy because astronauts decondition in space. There's a lot of exercise prescriptions that they get. There's a lot of research looking into how to keep astronauts fit and healthy. So it was really easy to build that in with physiotherapy, and it's one of the reasons why I chose that. So I went through my physio degree, and that's what I was doing, trying to build space in. One of the things that I was doing during this time was looking for opportunities. So I just looked online for people that worked in spaceflight. I imagine Harry found me in a really similar way, just Googling around who's out there, what do they do. And I started to find contacts. One of them is on the far left, Dr. Simon Evans. At the time, he was working at the European Astronaut Centre. He's now back over in the UK trying to set some UK-based space research and development centres up over here, which might make loads of opportunities for us all one day. But anyway, I was emailing around, and there were so many people I was emailing, just saying I'm really interested in spaceflight research, human spaceflight particularly. Can I get involved in anything? Probably similar to what you guys might be doing. I probably came up across similar problems that people just don't reply, or if they do reply, there just isn't really many opportunities. But I didn't give up, so I kept emailing and I kept telling people that I'd be interested if anything did come up. And eventually, I was told that there was a space medicine conference going on in Newcastle, probably 2010, 2011 time. And I came up, and it was a great place because I managed to meet all of the space medicine operations team from ESA at that conference, and one of those was Simon, who you see here. And what was nice about this is Simon then made me aware that there was an opportunity to go on a workshop at the European Astronaut Centre in Cologne. So it was a week-long workshop. I had to apply to get in. It was a space medicine workshop for students. So the minute an opportunity did come up, I applied, and I think that's something that I'd say to you, even if it doesn't feel perfect, just apply, get to know people, do a lot of networking, and don't be deterred. So I had to put an application in. There were three different strands. You had to try and solve a problem. There was CPR in space, which you can see we're having a go at here. I'll talk through this in a moment. There was trying to create an artificial gravity countermeasure, or the other challenge was dealing with data transfer issues on like a Mars mission. So you had to put an idea in for how you tackle that. If you were selected, it was a bit like space camp. We got taken out to the astronaut center. We lived in Cologne for a whole week. Went into the astronaut center every day as this big international student group. So I'd never met any of the people on the workshop before, and we were on the first day just put into groups. So I was working with a German, someone from another European country, can't remember which one country it was now, and someone else from the UK. And we all had put similar ideas in, but we were tasked over the week while we were doing all the other workshop bits. We had to come together as a group and figure out a single idea that we were going to pitch by the end of the workshop. So while we were out there, we were doing a lot of really fun things. So over here, we were going in a harness. You can see Simon's putting me in a harness. Here I am in the harness. And this was de-weighting us down to lunar or Martian gravity. We were using both. And we were trying to figure out how we could do CPR and get adequate depth of chest compressions in low gravity, because it's really, really difficult to do. So you can see we were trying all sorts of different things, putting something around using the knee. And of course, there's the official methods, things like the handstand, reverse bear hug methods. But we were seeing if there was anything else that could work. And it was a lot of fun, especially when things went a little bit haywire and we ended up just floating around at times. As I say, we were put into student groups, and here I am with my group, and we were trying to figure out how to do artificial gravity countermeasure. And it was pretty clear early on that spinning something was not necessarily going to be the answer to our artificial gravity problem, and we had to come up with a different solution. So rather than spin the module, because that had all sorts of technical constraints, we were being said, okay, if it breaks halfway to Mars, you can't replace the parts, your countermeasure is now useless, you've got a huge expensive part of spaceship which is just unusable, spinning the spacecraft or having some kind of centrifuge not an option. So over the week we instead came up with an idea to just have the astronauts run around inside a large circumference and cylindrical space module. And then we incorporated some rails so that they could have bungee cords to get extra loading, things like that. And interestingly, our proposal, we were in a competition against all these other student groups. We managed to win it, and it was quite a lot of fun coming together in this group of people from all different nations, all different backgrounds, trying to combine our ideas just in 1 week, pitching them to the head of ESA, NASA, etc., managing to win for our proposal. And that really opened more doors, because there were so many operational and research individuals that I met and talked with that week, and we were able to impress them with what we were doing. And that led us to being able to have chats, because we were going out on socials. There were barbecues with the ESA staff during this week. And it made me aware that there were internships, and these are available for anyone, and they're a fantastic thing. So go on Google, search for European Astronaut Centre internships. And there's also young graduate trainee posts as well if you've already gained your degree. And these are fantastic opportunities to go and work at the European Astronaut Centre for a period of time. So I was made aware of those. Annoyingly for me, I was told you had to be a student, and I was just in the summer at the end of my degree, so that's my second degree. So of course I came back and said, okay, I'm going to do a master's degree because I need to be a student a bit longer, and I want to get into this internship. So I started my master's degree and applied to go on a European Astronaut Centre internship as part of that. So I was really lucky. I then got selected for an internship working in the medical operations office at the Astronaut Centre back out in Cologne. I was doing my master's degree in physiotherapy at Sheffield Hallam, and they were awesome in that they built a whole module for me where I could count the internship towards my final master's qualification. But I'm sure you could also get a university to let you break in study or something as well to go out and take up these opportunities. And so I spent almost half a year living in Cologne. I had an office in the crew medical support office in the astronaut center. So there were astronauts just working above. There were flight surgeons, etc., on this corridor. I very often bumped into astronauts, had lunch with them. This is ESA astronaut Thomas Pesquet. When I recorded this in 2021, he was working aboard the space station now. But you drive in the morning and you bump into an astronaut walking to work together, have a good chat with them. You can ask them to meet up for lunch. We went to a couple of social events with them. So absolutely fantastic opportunity. So as well as my project work, I was getting involved in other PhD projects that were going on, what other people were doing. So this was assessing the astronaut fitness assessment that they do annually. I was being put through it. It included a VO2 max test. So I was doing this outside the internship. So I was going over to the sports university about 10 o'clock at night, being put through VO2 maxes, then driving back to the astronaut center, which is just outside Cologne, around about 1 a.m. back in work, first thing in the morning. This was getting tiring, but it was a lot of fun. So just an example of all the great opportunities that you could get doing these internships. As well, you get to undertake plenty of unique experiences. So this is the training hall at the Astronaut Center, where Europe's astronauts train on how to do the space missions. This is a Soyuz simulator. So Soyuz is the Russian spacecraft that takes astronauts to space. This is one of the most high fidelity simulators that exist in the world at the time, and I was being trained on this. You just got a day when they set you up with the astronaut trainers. They taught you how to use the controls. They were teaching me how to dock the Soyuz to the space station. And did this a couple of times, which was a lot of fun. We also got to go swimming in the neutral buoyancy facility. We got to go around the high fidelity space station modules that they have. So, so many experiences around doing your intern project. So I'd highly recommend that you have a look at these Astronaut Center internships. You just apply. You don't need any support with them. They're advertised. There's usually an advertising run once a year. Quite often they recruit now for systematic review projects. If you do that, you may end up working with me if I'm consulting on one of your projects, if you do a systematic review. But there's plenty of other projects as well. So just apply to those. And I say you don't need support for that. Just go ahead and do that. So my project, I don't have a lot of pictures from it, so they're a bit secretive about it all, but this is one that I did have. I can show you. And what I was looking at was gait analysis, so walking analysis of astronauts. It was part of the fitness assessment that they did with the astronauts before they went to space, when they came back, and then after rehab to see how do their movement patterns change after they've been in space flight. After the rehab, have we got everything back to normal, or is there something outstanding? So at the time, it was quite a basic 2D gait analysis. We were trying to improve it. So I was doing two things. One was looking at the process of how this was being performed at the various sites around the world where the astronauts were on landing day or pre-flight, that kind of thing. Looking at how we could improve that. And I was also going through a lot of historical data and actually doing the analysis and seeing what changed in the astronauts when they came back. Did it get back to normal after spaceflight? Were there any consistent trends across the astronauts that needed to be highlighted to the medical team? So that was the day-to-day work, but you can see around that there was a phenomenal amount of fantastic experiences and opportunities. And for me, I was really lucky. I got to then write up the report on what I'd been doing on my project, and it counted as part of my master's degree. I also had the opportunity then to go and present my work to the Aerospace Medical Association, which is the world's leading body. So have a search for those. It's often just shortened to ASMA. This was a conference in Chicago, or this might have been Disneyland. They had one in Disney World in Florida, which phenomenal place to go for a conference. And so the first time I went to an asthma conference presenting was on the ESA panel, presenting my internship project, which you can see here. I then since went out presenting 2 or 3 times more over the years, and various different projects, which I'll come on to later on. But if you want to go out to these conferences, they are really expensive, especially if you're going international. One of the ways that I managed to do this was applying for scholarships. I've won, I think, 3 or 4 scholarships when I was a student. Things like being the Outstanding Student of Space Medicine, the AMSRO Scholarship, which is one of the asthma-based ones, ISS Symposium Scholarship, and they'll fund your fees if you can win these scholarships. Just apply to them. I never thought I would win them, but I put the applications in. I was fortunate enough to win several, and they cover your fees to go into the conference, and quite often they'll give you some money towards your flights as well. So look for ways to enable these things, because students, I understand there's very little money. I've been there, and the scholarships can be a real enabler to get you out there. So go looking for what exists, because if you go on ASMA, it's a little bit hidden, but eventually you'll find that there are absolutely loads of scholarships every single year that you can apply to get you out there. Some of them ask you to do quite a lot. They might ask you to write a research proposal, and then you have to do a project, and then you get it. Others you can just apply for if you've got some experience already. So if you could, get into something like an internship at the Astronaut Centre, which you can just do off your own back, use that then to maybe apply for scholarships to then be able to get to conferences. And then network. I'm going to use that word again, network. Constantly be networking at these things, because that's how you get to know people, and that's how you find opportunities. Cold calling doesn't often work, but talking to someone at a conference because you're presenting and you're a scholarship winner has a much higher chance of someone actually trying to help you. The other thing that I was doing, and this is when I said, don't wait for the opportunities, go find them. Harry, I think is president of your organization that I'm doing this presentation for. That's probably a fantastic role to have, or be involved in the association and get involved and volunteer and do things. So I volunteered with both the UK Space Life and Biomedical Sciences Association, and I was the chair of that for many years. And as an offshoot of that, we were trying to set up the UK Space Environments Association, and we were running UK Space Environments conferences. So Space Lab, so Space Life and Biomedical Sciences Association, I was chairing, was trying to set up this sister organisation. And I became the coordinator for UK Space Environments for a number of years, and we ran 3 conferences. So I just led the organisation of these conferences. The first one was quite small, up in Aberdeen. It was quite basic. The second one that you see the picture here of was then at the Space Centre in Leicester. And then the final one, I ran a whole arm of the main UK Space Conference a couple of years back. And it was all UK Space Environments project work that we were doing. And we were running the association. It was difficult. We didn't have fees, so we were organising these conferences. We then had to cover it in sponsorship and ticket sales, and we were asking here, there, and everywhere to help and get funding in for these things. And you can see we were being sponsored by UK Space Agency, Wiley, Space Applications, and these were just 3 places where we managed to get some sponsorship from. But again, you have to go ahead and do this, and it's not easy, and there aren't a lot of people out there to hold your hand with this. But if you believe in it, strive really hard, take a few risks, pull something off, and you can really have a lot of success. And we were inviting keynote speakers who were fantastic to network with. And again, if you're on the organising team of the conference, you have much more access to the keynote speakers, any of the speakers that you're interested in, and they're much more likely to engage with you than if you're just a regular delegate, because you'll be working with them, you'll be organising them, you'll be helping them give their speech. So I got to know again a lot of astronauts through this, now from NASA as well. I got to know a lot of really useful contacts, have stayed in touch with them, and they've helped me then later on. So again, take the initiative, get more involved yourself, use those opportunities then to benefit you further on, and never think that networking isn't going to help down the line. It might not be clear straight away. Sometimes I've networked with someone thinking this is probably never going to be useful, and then 2 or 3 years down the line, wow, that contact turned out to be super useful in a way that I never realized at the time. So take advantage of things like that. And here I am presenting at the conference. I was giving awards away because I was the main conference organizer, so I was doing the welcome speech, award ceremonies. I also did some of the actual sessions, leading as a speaker. And by being organized and being on the organizing team, there's so many places you can get involved and be seen, and I think that's really helpful. So from that, I then did my MSc dissertation up at Newcastle. I was working on an exercise device that was a European Space Agency flagship project that was looking at core stability, so spinal stability, lumbar pelvic problems in astronauts. and looking at them avoiding low back pain or spinal injuries when they come back from space deconditioned. So I had an exercise device that I was working on. I'm exercising on it there, and I've got a 3D motion capture suit on. And again, a PhD is not an easy route at all. It's really difficult. I imagine similar to medical training. You a lot of responsibility on you to pull things off. It's very much your project. You're no longer in a group setting. You've got a supervisor, but they are just supervising you. It's down to you to make things work. And I came into this project, and there was problems trying to recruit participants. A lot of the previous studies have been very small. We needed big numbers. We needed people with back pain, and this was all challenges. Something I came up with myself was to take my studies down to the Life Science Centre, which is that building near the university, like a science museum. And I teamed up with their Meet the Scientist events that they do. And rather than just come along and chat to the scientist, I was like, I'm not going to run my entire study as a science exhibit at the Science Centre. And what that meant is people could come along, see what we were doing. We made this, you can see it here. We made a really cool looking space within the Science Centre. It was really eye-catching. There was videos, there was music, there was a lot going on. And people could then learn about the study that I was doing, and they could opt in. And it meant that before we were getting maybe 12 participants over 6 weeks, I could get 300 participants in 3 weeks. And not only that, because back pain is so prevalent in the population, about half of them that joined had back pain. So suddenly here I am without any need for complex NHS ethics to go into hospitals and recruit patients. I was recruiting from the general public as part of a science exhibit, and half of them were still clinically relevant, reporting having back pain, which was really useful for us to see, okay, does this device change kinematics in someone with back pain relevant to someone that doesn't? So it was huge for the project, and did some really good studies. But throughout my time, both when I was an intern at the Astronaut Centre and when I was becoming an academic, doing my PhD, something I really noticed, and I think medics will really buy into this more than, say, academics do, is that in human space medicine, there was a huge lack of synthesis. So I come from a medical background from physiotherapy, like a lot of you do. I think that, certainly know that Harry's a FY1 doctor. So in medicine, we're so clued up on evidence-based practice, and you go and look at the research, and Cochrane, I'm sure you've heard of Cochrane. It's the gold standard for synthesizing, doing systematic reviews and meta-analyses on medical evidence to say, okay, across all this scattered research out there that's so hard to synthesize on your own, what is the overall picture? Doing really good quality medical synthesis to drive forward evidence-based practice and clinical guidelines. And this didn't really exist in space medicine at all. And it was kind of surprising, because I would go to the flight surgeons and things and say, this is what I'm seeing, what do you expect to see? And they give me their opinion, and I said, well, don't you have things like the European low guidelines for low back pain? Don't you have any kind of guidelines or systematic reviews that actually have synthesized the evidence? And no, they didn't. The closest things were something called NASA evidence books, which were really not done to systematic standards, nowhere near a Cochrane level standard. And they were quite almost sketchy, and I think probably high risk of bias. So I left my ESA internship saying, let's create a systematic review group. We had that original idea back when I was at the Astronaut Centre. I was saying, this is a huge gap, and no one seems to have seen it, no one seems to be doing it. And it was quite an interesting thing to stumble across as a person, where you actually find something genuinely not being done, and that no one's already trying to do it. It felt quite almost entrepreneurial that I'd stumbled across this. And from then on, for everything else that I've done since, I've been really shouting about we need a systematic review group, like a Cochrane group for space medicine, and still doesn't really exist fully operational. But I'm going to talk you through now how I have managed to establish that to as good a degree as I think as I could have done in the time and that I've had since. But yeah, interesting to stumble across this lack of synthesis. So on my PhD, my supervisors were all interested in experimental studies, things that are going to be highly valued in the UK's research excellence framework, which my own personal opinion is a very flawed metric which scores research outputs. The reason I think it's flawed is it has a lot of bias towards experimental, individualistic studies. At least I've always been told by people that I've worked with in academia that systematic reviews are not considered all that highly in the research excellence framework. So this was always a battle for me in academia, trying to be able to do these things that the European Space Agency was saying this is so useful, we want to do these reviews, we can see how they work. But the constant battle in UK academia of them not being internally reviewed particularly highly, even though they are the top of the evidence hierarchy. But anyway, so how did I get them going? With a lot of convincing, my PhD supervisor eventually said that a systematic review could go in my thesis. Back then, I was being told that systematic review wasn't PhD worthy. I had to actually demonstrate that there were PhDs out there that had been considered high quality that were completely made up of systematic reviews. So again, a lot of taking the initiative, not taking no for an answer, making my arguments really, really strongly, but very nicely and very academically, to be able to persuade people to allow me to do things like this chapter 2 systematic review, looking at issues around the lumbar-pelvic area. And what was really nice is of all the chapters, this was the one I ended up being most proud of, because it was something that I had suggested myself. It was filling this gap, being the first really targeted systematic review to drive evidence-based practice for space medical operations. And it was picked up and was one of the main outputs of this topical team. So ESA puts topical teams together regularly to look at a problem that they have operationally. They wanted recommendations for reconditioning of neuromuscular issues, which control of the lumbar spine is. And they outputted my systematic review as one of the main things, and you briefly saw there, I was one of the authors on the topical team report, which is a fantastic output to have from a PhD, and it showed the strength of how a systematic review can really input directly to medical operations, and you probably see it in terrestrial medicine as well. And so it was the first systematic review that directly tied into ESA, that was designed to solve a problem that they were reporting and fed into recommendations made from a topical team. So you see the strengths of systematic reviews in space medicine there, and how ESA operations is really interested in these being performed, and as long as they're being done in a topic area that they're of interest to space medicine operations, and actually implementing the recommendations into operations. So you have a lot of impact from the research there, despite the fact that the UK ref might not recognise as that too much. And so I then got my PhD, became an academic, started working as a lecturer up in Newcastle, and around that I was still really trying to bring people together to say, let's make a systematic review group for space medicine. This is Dr. Rochelle Vello. She's a medical doctor. She's been on the COVID ICU wards this year, but she's a great friend. First met her at the Space Medicine Workshop in Cologne, and she's really quite big in UK Space Labs, the Space Lab Biomedical Sciences Association. And we do a lot of systematic reviews together now. But back here, we were down at King's College in London, King's College University, and we were bringing together a number of people at this meeting. As you can only see the picture of the two of us, it was just after the meeting, but we were bringing together stakeholders from across industry, ESA, universities, to say, let's do this and try and get this off the ground. And we established a systematic review group, and again up here in Newcastle, and we started to do some systematic reviews on topics that ESA said they would be really interested in learning more about. So it was very stakeholder driven, which I think is always really useful when you're doing a project. Actually make sure that you're looking at what is useful to the people that are going to be implementing your ideas so that you can show the impact. If you just do a random systematic review on any topic, if it's never picked up, if no one ever uses your results, that's nowhere near as valuable as if you can find out a problem someone's having and then try and inform their actual medical practice. Around the side of this, the other thing that I was doing was media training. So I was learning how to talk to the media about science, because it's one thing to write an essay or a journal article, it's something else altogether to talk to the general public. So I went on a training course, how to do TV interviews, radio interviews, just talking to people on the street. And off the back of that, I managed to get interviews on here, France 24. So I think, yeah, it was Thomas Pesquet was landing. It was Thomas Pesquet again, landing from his first space mission. I was live for about 15 minutes on France 24, talking through the problems of spaceflight and all the kinds of research that link to that. I've also been on Sky News, Discovery Channel, and did a series about spaceflight. I had a whole episode of that I was being the lead academic for. So, again, get involved. I took the opportunity to do the media training. I then sought out opportunities. So I would email into the media people and say, I know there's an astronaut landing today. Do any TV studios, are they doing a report? Are they interested? And most of the time, if you volunteer like that, you get picked up and they'll be like, yeah, can you come in an hour? We want you on whatever channel it is. So again, be proactive. Don't wait for it to come to you. So around this, I was also working in the university and alongside other people that were interested in spaceflight, and I got involved in some experimental work. I think this is everyone's dream, parabolic flight. So this is out in Bordeaux. So this was a project that was led by someone else, but that I got involved in, and we were out in Bordeaux on the zero-G plane. I did 3 flights over the whole week, 93 parabolas altogether, and we did different levels of gravity. So we did lunar and Martian gravity, and of course we were piloted by Thomas Pesquet again. It was really nice to bump into him. So they have 4 pilots when you're doing these flights to get it really accurate. But it just shows, that again, you can get involved in things. So someone was doing parabolic flight research. I got involved, became one of the researchers on it, and got that opportunity and now have that experience of being a veteran of 93 research parabolas in zero-G flights. But I mentioned that, in academia, especially in the UK, that systematic reviews not necessarily rated highly, and this was a struggle for me. So even though I have, I think we've got more than 10 systematic reviews that we've done with ESA, and even though I had ESA telling me that they've got systematic review projects to probably last my whole career, I found that academia was a challenging environment. And even though you've got a fantastic project, even though, if it's not rated highly, it was hard to find time to really do things properly. So I've recently moved away a little bit from UK academia. So I'm still in a research job doing government research now, but alongside that, now I've got some more time, I've created Space Biomedicine Systematic Review Method. So it's a group bringing together all the methodological solutions that we've come up against, that we've formed over the years we've been doing systematic reviews, because you may think that it's really easy to take a systematic review method like Cochrane off-the-shelf method and run any kind of problem, any kind of data through that methodology, and it's fine. It's really not, and we've come across so many different challenges that we didn't expect. It's like opening a Pandora's box of really tricky methodological questions. So as we've been overcoming those over the last maybe 6, 7 years we've been doing this, we've made sure to document all the solutions that we've had, publish the solutions, make completely free open access guidance available. And this group now is where I've placed all these resources, so they're freely available to anyone. And just 2 weeks ago, ESA came along to me because I mentioned a consultant for them on this, and they wanted to make a training course with me, which we've done. So in a moment, we're going to take a shift towards me talking you through a whistle-stop tour of how to do a space medicine systematic review project. But that training course that I just mentioned is completely open to anyone to watch. It's on a website, which I'll give you a link to in a moment. So if you're interested in this, listen to the rest of the presentation. It's quite brief here, but go then to the website and look through the training course, look through all the materials, and you can get involved that way. And quite often, ESA will want to do a systematic review. They'll talk to me about it, and we'll realise if it's going to be a lot of work, they will make an internship and advertise them. They're only advertised usually once a year, so you have to keep looking. They can be advertised at any time, so just keep an eye on that. And there's a link to the ESA internship page on the Systematic Review Group website. So here's the website, and you can get to it, www.spacemed-sr.vze.com. It's at the bottom there. So it takes you to our Space Biomedicine Systematic Review Methods website, and this is the main place to go now. This is where all the systematic review experts that I've been working with over the years have all come together, and a little bit external now to academia. And so this is independent now of universities, it's independent of commercial interference, as it were, which is what Cochrane wants you to be. And here you can get transparent, low bias, auditable review methods to enable your systematic reviews. And these are the methods that the ESA approved training course that we've just released about 2 weeks ago is all based on. And we have ESA medical operations staff within the group, as well as medical doctors. So really useful website to use. And you can see along the top, the navigation, there's guides, there's online advisors. So we've made flowcharts of how to make decisions. On those online advisors, it asks you questions that you might think about when you're setting your review up or doing a search. They're simple yes/no questions, and they actually then guide you through what sort of methodological direction is probably most appropriate to go in. And then there's publications that you can access to see how we've used things, and you can learn all about us on there as well. So really brief. So this is very brief. As I say, this is just to give you a flavour of how to do a systematic review in space medicine. There's a lot more to it than we're going to go through here, and I think if you're interested in this, the next stage would be to go and watch the training course on our website, because there's a lot more in that. So first thing you do is formulate your research question, and for this it's really useful to try and follow Cochrane's formatting. So traditionally Cochrane would be like intervention for problem or a specific outcome in specific problem. So for example, maybe paracetamol for fever in an ICU patient, something like that maybe. But in spaceflight, from my own background, it might be something more like flywheel exercise for muscle deconditioning in bed rest participants, maybe because astronaut data is very sketchy. So you often end up using simulation studies like bed rest. And you can be more specific than this. It might not be muscle deconditioning. You might even look at, fiber type of gastrocnemius. Is it switching between type 1, type 2 fibers? Is it going more postural in spaceflight, for example? So you can be as specific or as broad as your topic requires, but do try to have that nice specific question in mind early on. Once you've got your question, you can start to define your PICOs, so PICOS, PICOs. So So this is population, intervention, control, outcome, study design. Population, most spaceflight studies that I work on are ultimately interested in astronauts and trying to help space medicine data. And there is some astronaut data available publicly in research projects that you can review, but it's very rarely a randomized control trial, because it's very rare that you can have a control group in astronauts, because they don't want to not keep astronauts healthy. If there's an intervention, they don't want to give it to them all. But then you can look at bed rest studies, parabolic flights, isolation studies on Earth as well. I recommend trying to stay in human population, because the problem you have as soon as you go away from your target population, so as soon as you go to simulation rather than astronauts, you have a transferability question. How well does the data from your simulation actually represent astronauts? And that's one of the biggest methodological problems that we've been overcoming, and we've now got a couple of tools that will guide you through that transferability issue on our website. Intervention, so here we're looking at nutritional countermeasures, but it could be the flywheel exercise we mentioned previously. But have a specific intervention and be careful not to overcomplicate it. Keep it in the context of your question. Your control groups, if you have these, or comparisons. So again, it might be looking at people that didn't receive countermeasures. For meta-analysis, you do need to have a control group. If you don't have control groups, you can still do other analyses, so don't be put off. And on our website, it goes through how to, if you can't do a meta-analysis, you could still do an effect size analysis. If you can't do that, you could still do significance reporting. If you can't do that, you could still maybe do an empty review. Or you can switch to doing a qualitative review instead. And then you need your outcomes. So again, be specific. The more outcomes you have, the more complicated it could get. You may end up having to have a subgroup of analyses. And then your study design. So define your PICOs. And if there's one piece of advice that you remember from all of this, it's going to be the next slide. Pre-scoping. Pre-scoping is so important. So pre-scoping is something that a lot of people don't do, or a lot of people underestimate when I tell them about it. So pre-scoping is where at the very beginning you do very quick, I call them quick and dirty searches. So they're not your full systematic search. They're where you've got what you think is the question, you've started to think about your PICOs, but you actually need to go out and look what exists and think, is this question actually got data on it? What sort of data is it going to be? Where is the data? Is it in reports? Is it actually in technical documents? Is it in presentations? Or is it in proper journal articles? Is there actually even controlled data? So can you even find randomized controlled trials? And this really drives all your decisions around what kind of review you're going to be. Are you going to be systematic review meta-analysis? That means you have to have at least controlled trials. If that doesn't exist, are you going to just be looking at converting everything to effect sizes, so standardized units, so that you can at least look across all the papers without pooling in a meta-analysis? Are you going to only be able to do significance reporting? Or actually is all your data in very grey literature? So grey literature is things like technical reports, PowerPoint presentations, rather than proper journal articles. And is it that you're actually going to go through and maybe do a thematic analysis, reading through people's opinions from their conference presentations, or reading through reports from NASA's technical report server, and bringing more of a qualitative thematic analysis approach? Because you can do a thematic analysis within a systematic review with no problems. Once you've done that, you can actually get your search together, because you know what you're going to be as part of your review. You know what you're going to be looking for. You know the kind of keywords that people are using, and so you can start to put a proper search together. And here is where you'll have your Boolean logic, so your ORs, so this or this or this, and you'll maybe have mesh terms, so these are medical subheadings for specific journals, databases that use them. So they only work at specific ones like PubMed. But if you're searching PubMed and you're doing a medical review, you'd expect to see them where they exist. And so you have all your different things. So here we're looking for microgravity terms, so spaceflight, bed rest, or population, astronauts. Then we're looking for countermeasures, so active ones, passive ones, nutritional, We're looking for outcome measures over here then. So physical performance, things like VO2 max, orthostatic tolerance, muscle strength, etc., and anthropometrics. And then at the very end, we bring these together. So, we have all these different searches, which are all laws, and at the very end, we bring them all together with the AND strand, and then human filter here. And then there's a lot more on searching on the website. It's then really helpful when you're doing your screening to use tools to make this easier. So Rayan is just one example. You can do it in EndNote as well, where you can download all your hits and have multiple reviewers screen them for should they be included, yes or no. The nice thing with Rayan is it's free, it's online, it's very cloud-based. So this is very helpful when we're working internationally, say with researchers in Cologne or elsewhere, where we can download it, put it online. Everyone can then log in who's going to be a reviewer. They're blinded to each other. They can see the title, they can see the abstract, they can see the full text if they want it, all on this platform. You can use it on your phone, your tablet, your PC, wherever you are. And you can make decisions and say why you've made that decision. Then you can unblind it at the end, see where you've got disagrees, have a meeting to agree them, or get a third reviewer to get an agreement of 3 to make decisions. And again, they can be blinded again. So it lets you do a high quality blinded review. And this, again, it's just one example. There's more on this on the website, and Rayan itself has got loads of help materials available to teach you how to do it. Then make sure that you do your quality scoring. So quality scoring traditionally would be looking at bias. So is there any risk that the findings of the included study being biased? Was that because participants weren't allocated properly, they didn't do blinding? Was there incomplete reporting, selective reporting, anything else? In a lot of the space medicine reviews, I mentioned earlier, the transferability question comes up a lot. So again, if you're doing bed rest parabolic flights, not all outcomes transfer from each simulation equally. And so parabolic flight is probably the best, but it's so short. Bed rest is very good for deconditioning. Isolation is great for psychological issues, but not for deconditioning. So we've got tools on the website that help you address that transferability, but it is absolutely essential that you consider transferability as soon as you've come away from astronauts. And if you start to go into animals, you add another layer, because then you've got your animals transferring probably into human studies in simulation environments that then transfer into astronauts. And the further you go, the more indirect it gets. So try to minimize your transferability problems, but make sure you consider them. And then finally, you do your analysis. So over here, you probably have your forest plot. So these are your individual effect sizes from different studies or different data sets with confidence interval tails. And then at the end, you can pull them all together into a pool result. If you haven't got controlled trials, you can still do this without the pooling. So I had a big conversation with a statistician in Oxford and with Cochrane groups about, if you don't have controlled data, can you do this? It's debatable, but because it's such a point of consternation, people have argued quite strongly it undermines the underlying assumptions. We've recommended, if you don't have controlled trials, probably best not to pool, but you can still report the individual effect sizes and confidence intervals across different studies and look at overall trends. Is everyone on one side? Is it actually very unclear? Is it small? Is it large? And you just don't get the overall pooled result. If that doesn't exist, you can look at significance reporting, or you can do things like this, so qualitative analysis. So here we were interested in what are the technical constraints of the upcoming capture spacecraft like Orion and other transferable vehicles for preventing exercises. And we looked at NASA technical reports, we looked at PowerPoint presentations, and we pulled out all the different technical considerations and did this thematic analysis of looking at lower order, higher order themes and the overall dimensions, and working out how the relationships exist. So different kinds of lines represent different relationships. And then you can follow through and explain what the limited volume causes and what they link to, what limited mass links to and what that causes, what the distance if you're going to Mars links to, and And what's then cool is you can link these together. So you can do both a qualitative and a quantitative analysis and do a mixed methods approach. And that's really holistic and actually brings everything together. So in this review, we not only had the qualitative analysis here, but wherever any of these constraints were quantified, we had the quantitative data in as well. So, don't be afraid to look at different methods. Don't be afraid to go down the qualitative route. It's just as valuable. If you're feeling you want to be covering all your bases and being very holistic, combining quantitative and qualitative together is probably a really good thing to do. And again, we talk through how to decide these different analyses and where to get more information on them on our website and in the training PowerPoint that you can watch on the website. So I think, what this has shown is that we probably need to have a proper space medicine group. I think seeing that in the UK, at least academia doesn't value it as strongly as it should, and that there's a lot of troubles within academia that make it really hard to do, at least in my experience so far. And to try and follow on with Cochrane, that really a systematic review group should not be biased. I think really it needs to be agency-led and agency-funded going forward. So I think we need to try and build this into an ESA space medicine group or look for unbiased funding sources, which is going to be a challenge going forwards. But I think continued growth requires government agencies to help them make a fully resourced group like a Cochrane group to develop and maintain a database of trials. So that's all the trials that exist in human spaceflight. We've started doing this, but there's very little resource to really do it. And what this means is that whenever a trial comes out, it's put in the database, it's scored, it's data extracted, so everyone uses the same extraction, the same ratings, rather than each review having to do it itself. Then to make official space medicine systematic review protocols, like we've got our methods, these need to become the proper protocols. Register all of the systematic reviews that are going on, look at what the overall picture coming out of the reviews is, feed it directly into space medicine operations, bridge the gulf between what does operations want, what are the systematic reviewers doing. Provide gold standard methods like we already are doing. Perform key stakeholder-driven systematic reviews in-house, where you've got the expert reviewers. Ensure that the systematic reviews inform global space medicine policy. Enable transparent, auditable, up-to-date space medicine evidence-based practice, which is starting to happen now and needs to be strengthened. Provide the overarching research and political reports, so gap analysis. If we're finding there aren't enough studies done on something, that needs to be reported as a gap. It enables experimental researchers to say this needs to be a funding prioritization, to enable more funding to be funneled where it's needed. And then drive up standards of primary research, because when we score how well, say, a simulation environment represents astronauts, and we say what needs to be in there for it to be considered good, that helps experimental researchers know what they should put in when they're planning in order to be considered high quality and transferable later on. So this is a problem that still exists. We need to try and get this review group properly funded, resourced, and I think it probably should be agency funded. Trying to convince them of this is the next challenge. So that's everything I'm going to talk about. I've been about an hour, which is probably long enough. I've told you, if you're interested in more, come to our website, www.spacemedicine-sr.vzd.com. The link was earlier. And learn a bit more, look through the systematic review training course if that interests you. But overall, I hope that I've opened your eyes to how to try and develop a human spaceflight career. Find your interest. So for me, it was developing systematic reviews. Chase it, and you've got to put the effort in. Don't wait for things to fall on you. Believe in your dreams, believe in yourself, because I said it's not easy. I said it's challenging. It takes a long time. There'll be setbacks. There'll be frustrations. But if you really do commit to it and don't always take no for an answer and keep pushing your topic areas, you can totally achieve things. If I can do all of what I've done, you can too. A good starting point is to build it into what you're doing, whatever it is you're doing now. Just build it in. Find a way to build it in. Look for the opportunities like the ESA internships, the young graduate trainee posts. Look for things like funded PhDs that do come up occasionally. And findaphd.com is a great place for that. Talk to sites like King's College London, where they have aerospace medicine centres that are really high quality. And you might be able to go down there. I think there's a master's course on aviation medicine as well. So look for things like that and chase after it and make your own opportunities. But overall, believe in yourself. The opportunities, they are out there. You have to try hard to get them, but believe in yourself, chase it, dream big. Thank you for listening. I've been Dr. Andrew Winnard, talking about working a space career and a little bit of an introduction to doing space medicine systematic reviews, which I think are so important for future evidence-based space medicine. Thanks a lot for listening.